Welcome, everybody. Welcome to yet another Earth Ranger guided demo. My name is Tebogo, and as always, I'm always happy to be with you, presenting these kind of content to you. Uh, Today, specifically for this demo, we are not presenting anything Earth Ranger specific, but rather we are looking at the long awaited and robust tool titled Ecoscope. Right. So Ecoscope at its core is an application that affords you the opportunity to analyze your data as it sits in Earth Ranger, right? So this would include your events, your patrols, as well as your subject data, right? If you've been around the Earth Ranger community for a while, you would have noted that analysis has always been the missing chain link in as far as Earth Ranger is concerned, and that the question was always, okay, now I have all of this data sitting in my Earth Ranger site, my Earth Ranger database. What do I do with it? What can I use it for? As it's rich and would probably be able to afford me a lot of insights related to my operations and what we do within our organization. Well, now the answer is you run it through Ecoscope to gather those telling insights that will inform you about what is going on within your locality, within your organization, right? So the purpose of this guided demo is to introduce you to Ecoscope, the tools within Ecoscope, and at the end, I'll also introduce you or point you to various materials and resources that are comprehensive enough to be able to, introduce you to Ecoscope, as well as just basically broaden your understanding of the tool beyond this guided demo, right? Because this is not specifically a training, but just an intro to what it is and what you can do with it, right? What is available to you, basically. All right, cool beans. Now, as you can see right on my screen, you are looking at the landing login page for Ecoscope, right? As you can see, the URL is different. It's app.ecoscope.io/login. This is where you would navigate to in order for you to log into Ecoscope. But obviously, before you log in, you would require an Ecoscope specific user account. That's all and well simple for you to get. All you need to do is right on the login page after you go to app.ecoscope.io. It'll get to the landing page, and all you need to say is if you have no account, then just say sign up, right? If you get to sign up, you'll end up at a form which you complete. We'll receive your request to create an account for you, and we'll gladly create an account for you and send you all of the necessary details that you require in order for you to start using, accessing and start using Ecoscope, which would be great for you to get an account because it's in preparation for its production release in a few weeks' time. All right, awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in, intro you to what is available in Ecoscope, and just go through it, not comprehensively, but from a broader perspective. Like I said, then you have resources available to you that you can go and query at a time of your leisure to understand a lot more better about what is available. All right. Cool. So to log in, you would have your user account. Your username would be the email that you requested us to create a user account for you with. All right, there we go. All right, so now once you've logged into your Ecoscope, right, using your email address and your chosen password, this would be what you land on. Now, a disclaimer, because you would have been the first time that you log into Ecoscope, two things are going to happen, or two things are going to be different. The first and foremost is once you log in and your username and password are authenticated, you're going to have to accept the end user license agreement as per the same with as you logged into Earth Ranger for the first time. And then the second thing is what you see now under my workflows, your page would be empty because you wouldn't have configured any workflows that would have been run or are pending to run, right? So just picture this page empty without these 3 rows of workflows on your workflow. So it'll just be empty. Now, that's the general spread and the general presentation of what you're going to find when you log in for the first time. Right at the top, you have the logo of the software, right? And the name of the software. And then next to that, across the title bar, you have your workflows. So under your workflows pages would be the workflows that you have chosen to run based on the parameters or filters that you would have set to inform the kind of outputs that you want to generate and dashboard and dashboard format, right? And then you have your workflow templates, right? So if I click on that, you'll see the 3 default workflow templates: subjects, events, and patrol. So these would be the kind of the standard data types that you can read from your database as far as Earth Ranger is concerned. So these are just basically options for you to choose to say what you would like to configure or to analyze from your Earth Ranger database. using these three default workflows. So for instance, if I want to do a subject one, I click on it and then this page rendered, right? And then once I complete the form, which I'll show you an example of how to do that in a minute, it'll then move over to your workflows page where it'll be listed like any one of these here. So that would be the subjects one right there, right? So that's your workflow templates. You choose which one related to the data that you want to query from your database or to analyze, and then you complete the parameters, and we'll look at that in a moment. And then that'll be listed in the workflows wherein you can run it, right? But first and foremost, the first thing to do as we work our way from the left to the right is define a data source. Now, I've been mentioning that which data do you want to read from your EarthRanger database? The only way that's possible is that you would need to connect or point Ecoscope to your EarthRanger site's database, right? And you do that via the configuration of the data sources. So after workflow templates, you have your data sources. And if I click on that, then it'll show you all of the different data sources, i.e. EarthRanger databases that you have pointed Easter Island to. Now, in many instances, each individual user will only have access to a single database because that'll be your organizational database. But if you're a consultant deployment partner, then you are a system or interacting with multiple organizations who use EarthRanger, then you can obviously connect them to multiple sources at a time, right? So in this instance, for the purpose of this example, I've only connected to one to kind of narrow into that example where each individual EarthRanger user only has access to an individual EarthRanger site. Cool. So once you have your data source, the first thing then that you would do is click on Connect Data Source on the Data Sources page. And it's just easy, very simplistic, straightforward, no issues about it. All you got to give it a name. So for instance, if it was a site like, let's say it's SYNAC, for example, right? One of the SYNAC sites in Latin America, I'd say SYNAC, EarthRanger URL, I'd put in the URL, right? And then I'd use my EarthRanger username and password. So basically, I'm authenticating this connection with my username and password. And based on the permissions that my user has, I'll only have access to that data as from the database of our EarthRanger site, right? So I have EarthRanger username, password, login, and not login, but then say connect. Once that is connected, your data sources will be listed here under the data sources list or table, right? And that's it. So that's all you need to do as far as the data source is concerned. The name, URL, username, and password, connect, and then it'll be listed here. It's as easy as that, pointing Ecoscope to a related database, right? Or a related EarthRanger site. Then what you could do as well, from here, what you then do is we move now from the right to the left to say what data do we want to fetch or analyze from this data source, this EarthRanger site, right? So then I go back to my template and I choose whichever template that I want to interact with in that specific instance, right? So I'm not going to go through these because I've already created examples of all three of them. So we're going to look at them a little bit more closer and what elements are available to you or parameters are available to you to configure. All right. So you have your workflows or my workflows. Once you come in here, so based on whichever workflow I would have chosen, I would then define the parameters and then I would click on run. Once it runs, it'll tell me the following, right? It gives me the name that I would have defined, the template that I used. So now you see go back to those three templates and we have examples of all three. The status of the workflow run, is it successful, is it pending, or did it fail to run, right? And then it gives me the last run time of each individual workflow and how long it took for that specific workflow to run. Now, do note that there are instances where if you're dealing with a lot of data, right now I was running very short, very small data points just for the purpose of the demonstration. But if you're dealing with a substantial amount of data, it might take a while, right? So your duration won't always be a minute, 2 or 3 minutes. It'll be based on the amount of data you have or you're analyzing from your EarthRanger site or database, then it'll basically compute all of that according to the volume of data that you're trying to get access to. What I want to do is then let's look at the different parameters within each individual workflow and then the results of each, right? And I should say that because we don't have access to like live data within any EarthRanger site, we use demonstration data. Some of these are a little bit on the thinner side as far as examples are concerned. What I want to do is I'll start with the events one, right? So I'm going to click on events. So I'm just going to show you what I've already, right? So in doing that, I'm just showing you the parameters that I have set up, right? So I have workflow details. Now you'll see that as is consistent with Earth Ranger, if something is required, it has a little asterisk next to the title of that specific field, right? So workflow name is necessary, right? Because I'm creating a copy, it'll say Easter Island events dash copy, and then I can give it a description. So here I just put in the date of which I'm trying to, or which I want to analyze the events from the Easter Island site. Then I have the data source. Because I'm only connected to a single data source, it by default uses that data source. If I had multiple, this would be a drop down field wherein I can choose what I want to connect to. And then time range is just basically like any other time range you've used. As far as Earth Ranger is concerned, is the daytime period of the amount of data that you want to analyze, basically the time frame of data that you want to analyze, right? Then if I go to the bottom, then I can get into the crux of which events do I specifically want to analyze from our Easter Island demo site, right? So then I can choose, and you'll see it's as easy as you just choose your event types from a list. So if I wanted to add an additional one, I'd say add. Then you'll see if I drop down, then it'll give me all of the available event types within my data source with Ranger site, right? So if I'm looking for wildlife sighting, for instance, so I can type that out like that and say wildlife sighting. And then once I'm happy with that, or I can add an additional one, but I'll leave it at those 5, right? And you can also change them around. You can change the order around if you prefer. So if I want this one to be right at the top, move eBird to the bottom, you'll see they kind of change around, right? So they swap according to how you want. And if I now remove one, so I don't want to see wildlife sightings, actually, I can just remove it like that. And I can look for another one. And then once I'm done, happy with my choice of event types, then I can choose. Now I've chosen the date, the event types that I want to analyze. The next thing is how do I want to group this data, which will determine how the data is presented on my dashboard. And now the nice thing with Ecoscope, because it was created with it was designed with the conservation practitioner, data analyst, and researcher alike, it was created to be intuitive and very easy to use, right? So you'll see that as you navigate through the system, these like tips and kind of like guidelines of what you are configuring before you even configure it. And what I mean by that is, if I highlight this part here, it tells you what it is that you are specifying where under the group data parameter, right? So you can see exactly what it is that you are specifying and what happens if you add a parameter or if you leave it out, right? It basically explains itself so that you don't have to wonder about what it is that you are doing. So right now in this example, I've grouped these by time, and the time parameter then has obviously its different attributes. Or if I wanted, I could say, okay, group these by category. And then if I choose by category, I'll say, okay, give me by event type, right? So you always have the category or time group by. So in this instance, I'm going to say go back to time, and my time should be, let's use day of the month, right? And I can have multiple groupers, right? So I could say grouped by time using time of the month, day of the month. And then you could also group by category per event type if you want to. Obviously, your filters have to be correlational. They have to make sense. It can't be too outward, because then you're going to have a very jaded presentation as far as your dashboard is concerned. All right. So if I don't want category, just take that out, and everything else related to that falls away, right? So I'm just going to use that one group or that grouper. And then you have more advanced configurations, right? So if I toggle to the bottom here, it shows you exactly what I'm looking at. So this is a bounding box. If you have a specific area wherein you want to analyze events for, you can define that box of where you just want to focus the analysis within, right? And I just left it empty because I want to analyze for our entire locality, our entire region, right? And then you also then get an opportunity to define the events bar chart, time interval, because you chose time. Is it by year, month, week, or day, right? So you're going to say day. And then you also have opportunity of saying or defining your base maps, right? So by default, you'll get a terrain and a satellite map within Ecoscope. You can add your own if you so wish, or you can change these around where, because terrain is the first one, you can say, I want satellite to be the first one. I'm just going to move terrain back. So you can order these around like so. And then I can scroll to the bottom and say, okay, then I can define an event density map as well. So this is another advanced configuration. So here you define grid cell size, coordinate reference system. And as I said, you have these tooltips within each and every section or parameter that you are defining to advise you, to inform you what it is that you are setting up, right? So normally for me, I would leave the advanced configurations as is, unless if you're really trying to narrow down on specifics, then maybe they would be applicable to your specific application. But in this instance, I just leave them as is, and I define the elements that are pertinent to what I'm trying to analyze from my database. So once I'm happy with that, I'll say submit. It'll land on my workflows, as you see this one here, and I'll say events workflow. The status will be ready, right? And then I'll have a little run button here on the side, right? And once it has run successfully, then if I click on that workflow, this is what I'll have access to. Now you'll see it's still computing. Let me just move myself here to the middle. It is still computing. And remember, as I say, the more data you have pulled out or you're analyzing, then the more time it'll probably take to compute all of that information for you. Now, this is what I have basically analyzed from my side. And this is now the dashboard of what I am looking at, right? I have my month, right? And then I have all of my events on the map. This is an interactive map, by the way. It's not static. And I can hover over specific points to tell a story, right? So I can see that is a firm's event. That is a just move this around. Or that's another thing you can do as well. You can edit your layout for better visualization. Right now you have all of those data there. So I can hover over a point. I can zoom in. Right, like I said, the maps are interactive. I can zoom in. So that is the event. If I want to get in closer, I can go there. That's a firm's rep event. And that is a snare event. Right, this is over the month of September, right? And that is another snare event. And you can tell all of the kind of the summary detail, the event serial number, who reported it, the event date and time, right? And then you have the bar graph in here, and you can hover over the elements within the bar graph as well to get a more clearer story. And as you can see, you can already identify a gap that the team collected, or for the events that we are querying. We have no data related to them between the 6th and the 8th of September, right? So that's just the first part of the dashboard. And what you can do is, or what's available to you is, you can move your dashboard around, right? So I can have my bar chart, my pie chart, and then after that I have my events map and my density map, right? So obviously with my density map, it just shows me that within this pixel, a pixel just represents one event, right? And as you can see, our events are sparsely scattered around the Easter Island, from southeast, southwestern, more central, and then within an outlier all the way to the eastern part of Easter Island. Right. So this is the dashboard that you would get as far as the parameters that you define. Obviously, in your context, when you run this through a more data-rich Earth Ranger site, you will get more telling results in terms of what you're trying to analyze. Right, I'm just gonna try and push this to the top. Let me just bring this guy back down here. Sorry. Let me pull this guy to the top then. Right, so you can just basically play around with the view of what you want to show. That's basically what you have the ability to do, right? Define your parameters, filters, and run your workflow. It'll compute and analyze the data and offer you a dashboard, which you can change the orientation and the presentation of around, right? All right, so that's what you can do. The next part is, let's look at a different workflow. Let's look at the subject tracks workflow and see what parameters are they available to you to define, right? So again, what I'm going to do is I'm just kind of going to create a copy. I'm just going to say edit. So say continue, sorry. So this is what it would look like. right? Workflow name similarly, and you could give it a description, but it's not necessary. Data source, again, because there's only one. You go and connect to the one, then starts the parameters that I can define myself. Data date range, the subject group. Now note that with the subject tracks workflow, you're only limited to selecting a single subject group at a time, not multiple, right? So what you could do is put in your subjects that you would want to specifically analyze from your Earth Ranger site into a single subject group that you can then analyze from your Ecoscope module, right? Then you get to the point where you define your groups, right? How do you want to group the data? Again, I chose time, but you'll see you have time in category, right? And then I'm going to say time, day of the month, and group by time again with the month, right? So now it's time. Both my groupers is time. First one is defined by the day of the month, and the second one is also time, but now grouped by the month itself, right? And then you have your advanced configurations where you have the trajectory segment filter. The nice thing again, it's those tooltips at the bottom tells you exactly what it is that you are defining, right? So look at that. Look at the resources that I'm going to point you to. Define these in great detail and give you great examples in order for you to be able to navigate through all of this without scratching your head and wondering what is going on. And similarly as well to the events workflow, you have base map layers and the time density map, right? So it's the same attributes for two different workflows where you have your base maps where you can do the very same as we advised earlier, and you have your time density map where you can define your cell size and coordinate system. But notice that now we have two additional attributes here with speed factor and shape buffer expansion factor, right? Which have their own tooltips, which advise you what those are, right? And please do forgive me if I'm not going into explicit detail with each of these. As I said, this is more of a overview, a very generalistic intro overview. I'm also just trying to leave it to you to kind of have a more an interest in finding out how this could be telling within your operations or how you analyze data within Ecoscope. All right. So once I'm happy with that, I'd say submit. This one I do this because I basically said edit, although I didn't change anything. I'm just gonna say submit. And we're going to give it a moment. There we go. You get a message at the top right telling you that the configuration has been submitted. And as you can see now, status is ready, which means that according to how I've set up the workflow, everything is correct and as it should be. There's actually a result that can be derived from the parameters as I've defined them. And then once I'm happy with that, I'll say run. And I will see that last run time has been updated. And then I have a little message spinning wheel showing me that something is actually happening in the back end, right? Now, while that's happening, I know it won't take long. Let's just look at the patrols coverage run workflow, right? So with the patrols coverage workflow, let me just go back here, vertical dots, and say edit, continue. And these are the parameters that you can define, right? Name, description, data source, by default, then again, you have your time range. So you kind of get that consistency, right? So that, like I said, it's easier to use. It kind of becomes muscle memory about what parameters lie where and what to do with them, all right? Then you have your time range. Then you get to actually specify which elements from your database you want to analyze. So now here you have an opportunity to choose which patrol types you want to analyze from your Earth Ranger database, right? And you can choose multiple. So this would be the similar kind of process we did with event types, where we were choosing which event types we want to analyze. Here we get the opportunity to choose which patrol types we want to analyze for. Now with the patrols, because in Earth Ranger you can associate an event within a patrol, right? Here you have an opportunity to choose both patrol types and event types, right? Because they basically have a mutual or they're relational as far as you being able to create events whilst you're on a patrol. So this would be the opportunity. Well, this is where you'd be afforded the opportunity to do that. And then you have your advanced configurations, right? Where you could say, okay, choose by patrol status, or you want to filter by patrol status done. Patrol status 2, let's take another one and say, let's say still active. So you now get the opportunity to say you want to which specific patrol type, event type, as well as as far as the patrols are concerned, the status of each individual patrol based on the patrol types that you have chosen, right? So we're going to say done, active, and let's just choose one last one. Let's choose the ones that were cancelled, right? So you want to quantify all of that information to see how many were done, how many are still active, and how many were cancelled within the daytime range that we have selected. And talking about the daytime range, let me just go back up and let's put it since the first month. That's fine. So this would be about 8 months worth of data. So hopefully we get a telling result as far as our dashboard is concerned. All right, and then we say, how do you want to group the data by category, right? Patrol type. Yeah, that's fine. We don't want to use patrol serial number, and you can add again with the groupers, multiple groupers based on what you're looking at adding to the site, right? And then you have trajectory. What do you want to differentiate tracks by color using the selected category, right? That's the tooltip. So I'll say differentiate them based on patrol subject, but you have other elements that you could choose. Because we've selected patrol types, right? We'll say differentiate them by patrol status, right? Because remember, we chose the status of the different patrols. And then you have your advanced configurations, which would be similar now because both patrols and events, it's the previous two advanced configurations that we saw. Is it just the segment filter, right? And you'll see those are in there. Event location filter. This is where you add that bounding box that we saw earlier, or you could filter for exact point coordinates, right? And then you have your base maps, which I'm not going to look at again because you've already seen that. And then how do you want to define our bar chart for events? We're going to say you do them by month, all right? And then time density map as well, similar to the one we saw earlier for events, grid cell size, and coordinate preferences. All right. But like I said, for the most part, I leave these advanced configurations as they are, and I just focus on the data that I know how to filter for. Right. Once I'm happy with this, I'll say submit. Oh, sorry. Let me just choose something arbitrary. Group by do another category and choose serial number. Okay, now you see this is where it gets into a clash. I kind of have they uncorrelate, right? Category. So let me say time, and let's use month. Okay. Time, month. All right, that's fine. Then we'll say submit. Submitting. There we go. Now we're ready to run this workflow. Right, as you can see, our patrols workflow, we're ready to run. Our subject tracking workflow has successfully run, and it took 3 minutes, right? So now we can go and view the results of this workflow, right? So day of the month in August, obviously because of the date filter that we used, we started on the 11th, so we're looking at a month's worth of data as far as the patrols workflow is concerned. I mean, the subject workflow is concerned. So for the 1st until the 10th, we'll find no data. So I'll just go to the 10th. You'll see the same will not happen. As soon as I jump to the 11th, then we'll have some data in there showing us that there has been data that was found and data that can be presented to us in our dashboard. So you'll see you're going to get a message saying that it's working on it, right? And right now, remember, the results are not important. It's just to kind of show you what is available. And once you've gotten your user account and you've read through the additional materials, please take a moment and just play around with the data on your site, connect your data source, analyze the data on your site. Now, back to the subject tracks workflow, you'll see that I am able to hover over the subject track directly from the map. And this is, again, an active map. If I hover over it, it gives me metadata related to that, when it started, right? So this would be the start time of the track, within the analysis, date range that we've chosen, duration, speed. If it was nighttime, obviously if it says false, it means this was during the day, right? Subject name and the subject 6, right? And there's another one there at the top, and it gives me kind of the same attribute related to this specific subject, right? So you can imagine if you have a lot more data, there's a lot more differentiation that you would be able to see. Right, this would be a home range map. Again, just this is because we use a very minimal amount of data. Right, so this would be a home range, and you have the time spent on a specific location, right, with a gradual decrease or increase of how much time was spent at a specific time, right, a specific place. And then you have day-night, right, the day-night ratio. Obviously, these were collected during the nighttime. It says false, subject name, Fatu, and that's the 6, right? If I can just pull this to the right for us to see the details related to these. There we go. All right. So this is how the tracks workflow would look like, right? And then finally, you have the net square displacement. And again, if you want to understand a little bit more, please do read the additional materials, which I'll point you to now in a moment. I know I've been referencing them a lot. All right, here we go. So that's the subject tracks workflow. Let me just show you that you are able to change this. So if I go into the month of September and I start on, let's say the 11th is fine, or let's take the 7th. Okay, let's go back to the 11th and hear what happened. Take the 11th. Now I have the night day ratio, mean speed, max speed, number of locations. You see now we have a lot more data-rich data being displayed on that dashboard. Let's just see how that looks from the dashboard perspective. So this is what the output would look like, right? So as you can see here, we have some form of differentiation where this first map relates to our subject group trajectory map, right? So this is the speed at which subjects are moving, right? So this is what you have here. And please, this is test data, so don't take it any other way. Right, so you can see that as I move this along the track as well, the attributes or the metadata within the table also adjusts accordingly because this is a track, right? So each individual point has its own unique metadata attached to it. Then I have my home range map, which at this specific moment there isn't anything selected for that. Then I have my similarly night and day map. And then now I have my net square displacement, which you can see looks a little bit more telling in comparison to the one you saw back in August. Now let's jump back to our final workflow, which should be the patrols workflow, my workflows. All right, perfect. There we are. A minute later, our patrols workflow is successfully run. And I can click on this. No, actually I just want to click there and view it. And there we have. So because of the parameters that we have set, we have 1 dog patrol. That's total time of the patrol. That's the distance they covered, average speed, max speed. And I'm waiting for my dashboard elements to show up, right? There we go. So this is the entire track of the patrol, right? This is the events that were created on the patrol, which is only 2. And this is the time density map. So obviously as the graduation of color gets redder, if you want to say, the more time they spend at a specific location. And then you have your patrol event bar chart, right? And that's basically what a patrol looks like. So if you wanted to do another different patrol type, I'd say, okay, show me special ops for the month of September. So the reason why we selected a batch of patrol types in our workflow, our definition, but we are only seeing these 2. This is because probably there aren't any other types of patrols on our data source site that exist, right? As you can see, even with this one, it's giving us very paltry data. We have 1 patrol, total time was 6 hours, but the distance was only 200 meters. Speed is nothing. So which means this was actually a very conducive patrol. And we could go as far as saying nothing actually happened during this patrol, right? You can see we don't have a pie chart because there are no events. This is a time density map. You can zoom out. There we go. And then we don't have a patrol events bar chart related to it, right? So those are our patrols. And that's the patrol dashboard. All right. Now, what I want to show you is some ways in which you could gather more information about Ecoscope, right? So if you look at the top right there, you'll see there's a button that says help. If I click on it, this is the central resource that I was referring to. If you click on Help Center, like so. It'll bring you to the Ecoscope Help Center, wherein you'll have access to a plethora of information related to what you have access to as far as Ecoscope, the module, is concerned, right? You have a lot of data rich documentation in here that details what certain parts of the system relate to, how to set them up, and the kind of outputs you're going to receive. So for instance, if I click on workflows here, just as an example, you will see that you have a standing workflow, how to create a running subject tracking workflow. So each individual type of workflow has its own unique attributes that you can use, right? Or that you can relate to. And the articles are very, very data rich, right? So understanding templates. If I click on this, you'll see it takes you through what we've just went through in a lot more comprehensive, usable detail that the video will give you. And soon enough, when we have scheduled trainings for Ecoscope, we'll be jumping into these to address any specific questions that you may have related to any of the content or the software itself, the ability and the tools within the software itself. And please, in the interim, if you have any questions before or even after Ecoscope, the production releases out, do not hesitate to reach out to our team via support@earthranger.com. We're always happy, willing, and wanting to support your Earth Ranger Gwindi and Ecoscope needs. So please don't hesitate. Reach out to our team and we'll gladly assist, right? So just remember to create an account. If you don't have an account with that login page, there is create an account link wherein you'll be able to fill in a form which will receive your request to create an account for you at, and we'll create an account for you. So this would be this form here. And within Ecoscope itself, if you click on help, you'll find resources. You can go to the help center and read all of the articles within the help center that relate to your specific query or element that you are trying to understand a little bit better. From my side, I thank you for your patience with my fluid voice. Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to sit here in front of you and deliver such great news as far as the long-awaited analysis tool, Ecoscope. We appreciate all of the support and all of your efforts in the field of protecting wild spaces and wildlife. Have yourselves a great one, and hopefully I see you at one of our upcoming workshops. Thank you. Cheers, cheers.